everyone, welcome back. I'm your host Sherry, and you are listening to From the Dark Side. Today we have a case out of South Carolina. This case is every parent of a college student's worst nightmare. A 21-year-old woman disappeared one night, and she is located not long after. But this story has a tragic ending. You will probably never feel the same way about getting into an Uber again once you hear her story. As always, my sources are in the description area. This is episode 120, The Case of Samantha Josephson. This story took place in 2019. R&B singer R. Kelly was charged with 10 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse. There was the college admission cheating scandal. 50 people, including Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, were charged. President Donald Trump went to North Korea. He was the first U.S. president to ever enter the country. Jeffrey Epstein was found deceased in his jail cell. Women in Saudi Arabia were granted the right to obtain passports and travel independently. And lastly, the first electric aircraft took flight for 15 minutes. Let's start where it all began. Samantha Josephson is 21 years old. She was born August 13th, 1997. She is originally from Robbinsville, New Jersey. Her parents are Seymour and Marcy. She has a sister named Sydney. Samantha lives in Columbia, South Carolina, where she attends school. Her parents live in New Jersey. Samantha lives way out of state, away from her family. She attends the University of South Carolina and lives in a high-rise apartment near the campus with several college roommates. She is so close to graduating. She's only got a little more than 2 months before she walks the stage. But once she graduates, she's not done. Samantha had recently been accepted into Drexel School of Law, so that's where she would start in the fall. In fact, she was given a full scholarship to attend. This is super impressive and a really big deal. Samantha wanted to work in international law. She had traveled recently to study abroad in Madrid, Barcelona, and Paris. She loved the international life. She would have made an amazing lawyer or whatever she chose to do with her law degree. Samantha has a boyfriend named Greg, and they have been dating for 2 years. He graduated from the University of South Carolina 2 years prior. He lived 2.5 hours away, but Samantha and Greg talked on the phone all the time, and they visited each other on the weekends. They made it work. Although excited about just receiving the news that she's getting a full ride scholarship and she's graduating in just a couple months, Samantha had recently been feeling down because a family member was going through a medical issue. She asked her boyfriend Greg to come spend a couple days with her, but he couldn't. He reminded her that she would be visiting him in just a few days, so just hold out a little longer and we'll see each other within a week. He tells her, go have fun with your friends. Go out. Go celebrate your acceptance into Drexel. Go have fun, and maybe it will help take your mind off of things. On March 28th, 2019, Samantha and her friends head out for a night of laughs and good times. At 12:40 a.m., they arrive at a bar that is just 1.5 miles from Samantha's apartment where she lives with other college students. This bar is called the Bird Dog, and it's located in a college district called the Five Points Columbia. Looking at it on a map, it's this trendy bar. I looked at their drink menu, and they have just about every kind of drink you can imagine, as well as food, including a triple threat burger. It looks like a place I would have loved in my 20s. Nowadays, not so much. The area around the bar looks like any downtown college area. However, the street that the bar is on is kind of odd. Like, I would get lost trying to figure out where to go. There's a roundabout and a fountain, and it's hard to figure out which streets are one way. Samantha has a good time hanging out with her friends. She FaceTimes her boyfriend, and they told each other how much they loved one another, and Samantha says she's getting ready to call an Uber. It's 2:00 a.m., and she has to be at work the next morning. God, I miss being 21. If I hung out today at age 43 until 2:00 a.m., I would be unable to function at work the next day, especially if alcohol was involved. Samantha dips off by herself and requests an Uber. She tells her friends good night and that she would see them tomorrow. Samantha heads outside to wait. Her Uber is going to be a dark gray car. Now, even though it's 2 a.m., outside of this bar is crowded. There's people outside smoking and carrying on. She's not waiting out there alone. There's at least 15 or 20 people. This is a late night college bar. At 2:09 a.m., a black Chevy Impala pulls up next to Samantha, who is waiting there. Relieved that her ride has finally arrived, she happily gets in the car and is going to make the 1.5 mile trip to her apartment. Except the car begins going in the opposite direction. As I mentioned, Samantha's Uber is supposed to be a dark gray car. This is a black Chevy Impala. Meanwhile, her real Uber driver shows up to the bar and doesn't see Samantha anywhere, so he canceled the ride. One person who is aware of Samantha's whereabouts is her boyfriend, Greg. So Greg and Samantha have this deal where they always know one another's locations using the Find My Friends app on their iPhones. They share each other's locations and can log in anytime and see where the other one is. In fact, all of Samantha's group of friends share their locations with each other. Greg, although 2.5 hours away, had just talked to Samantha and she told him she was getting an Uber and good night. Greg wanted to make sure that she got home safely, so he gets on the Find My Friends app and sees Samantha's phone is traveling in the opposite direction of her apartment. It's heading towards a town called New Zion. He tries to call her a couple times but doesn't get an answer. He also texts her a couple times, but she doesn't respond. The messages showed that they were being delivered. Samantha and Greg each had red receipts turned on their phone, but it just shows delivered, not read. So she's in that car, text messages are being delivered, but she's not looking at them. That is terrifying. Eventually, the phone stops sharing her location. He says in the entire 2 years they have been dating, that has never once happened. Greg assumes she must have went to a friend's house, or maybe there's some reasonable explanation for why she didn't get home. Maybe she left her phone in the Uber and it's just a misunderstanding, but he's going to go to bed and he would talk to her about it tomorrow. Greg awakens the next morning and he has several missed calls from Samantha's friends. They tell him Samantha didn't come home last night. She didn't show up for work at the Liberty Tap Room. Something is very wrong. One of Samantha's friends gets on her computer and is able to see that Samantha's Uber was canceled. There was a $5 cancellation fee since she wasn't out there waiting when the Uber was there. They know now that she got into a car and it was not her Uber. Samantha's phone location on the Find My Friends app showed that she was last in the Rosewood area. So her friends head out there and look for her phone or any signs of Samantha. They knock on doors, but nothing shows anything beneficial to locating her. Greg is now en route to Columbia, as well as Samantha's parents, Seymour and Marcy, who are 10 hours away in New Jersey. They try calling hospitals and are so desperate that they even called a police station to see if she had gotten arrested, which would be completely out of character since she's never been in any trouble, but they are running out of options here. At this point, they would welcome the news that she got arrested and is alive and safe. Samantha's parents are on the phone with police a lot during the trip to South Carolina. Seymour is driving 90 miles per hour and just wants to get there as soon as possible to assist with the search. Samantha's friends head back to the Bird Dog Bar and speak to the owner, and he doesn't have any info of where she went, but he does have something that will help. The owner of the bar says, "I've got tons of security cameras. Let's go through the footage." He pulls up the security footage and they see Samantha waiting outside the bar around 2:05 a.m. They see a black Chevy Impala had made a few rounds up and down the street. The prosecutor in this case described it as a shark circling its prey. Then they see the car pull up next to Samantha and she gets inside. They can't make out the license plate number though. Now they have solid evidence that Samantha definitely got in a car last night that was not her Uber. The Uber that she was supposed to be in, her real Uber, was a charcoal gray Dodge Charger. This is a black Chevy Impala. I can't imagine the emotions that the real Uber driver feels knowing that he was supposed to be the one to pick her up and she ends up getting into the wrong car and is now missing. The police issue a be on the lookout for this car. Hats off to the Columbia Police Department for their excellent work in this case. Also, Samantha's friends who took action right away. Things are going to start happening very quickly. At 4 p.m. on Friday, March 29th, it's been about 15 hours since Samantha got into the wrong car. 70 miles away in New Zion, South Carolina, a coroner is called out to this rural area. It's a wooded area off a dirt road. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. Two young guys named Andrew and Ryan are turkey hunters. They were out doing their thing, hunting for turkeys, when they see something in their binoculars. They can't make out what it is, but it's laying there on the ground. They begin walking towards it and realize it's the body of a young female. She was deceased and riddled with stab wounds. The body was identified as 21-year-old Samantha Josephson. Crime scene investigators arrive and state that she is laying on her back and has stab wounds. We later learned from the medical examiner that she had 120 stab wounds in total. Her shirt was pulled up, one of her earrings is missing. They used this special light and go over her skin and could see bruising over most of her body. They noticed her fingernails were all broken. Samantha really put up a fight. She was fighting for her life. They determined that this was not the original crime scene. She was killed somewhere else and then dumped here. It's truly remarkable that she was found so quickly. This is a rural area off a dirt road. It could have taken months for her to be located, but the turkey hunters were in the area that day and spotted her body. There's some things that are not with Samantha that she had on her when she left the bird dog. Her house keys, which had a pink keychain, and her phone, which is a rose gold iPhone. So finding them would be able to help lead to their suspect. Samantha's parents were at the Columbia police station when the call came in. They had to phone their other daughter, Sydney, who is home in New Jersey, and tell her the news, and Sydney's screams could be heard through the phone. The rest of Samantha's family, her boyfriend Greg, and her friends are informed that Samantha's body has been located. A large vigil attended by hundreds of folks takes place in her hometown of Robbinsville, New Jersey. Samantha was remembered by many as a loving girl who was kind and bubbly and friendly to everyone. She was incredibly smart and had her whole life ahead of her. Her parents and sister attended the vigil, and it was so hard to watch them during these very early moments after their daughter's death. Her boyfriend Greg got up and spoke to the crowd and cried as he talked about how senseless this was. No one on the college campus felt safe anymore. Samantha's college offered counseling to students, and people were hyper-vigilant when going anywhere. Police are focused on finding her killer. Officer Jeffrey Kraft, who is a canine handler, is clocking in for his nighttime shift. They were all briefed about this car to look out for, a black Chevy Impala. Officer Kraft watched the surveillance video at least a dozen times before getting in his car and starting his patrol. He drives around Rosewood for a bit, then decides to head over to the 5 Points area, which is where the Bird Dog Bar is. This is a little after 3 a.m. Suddenly he spots a black Chevy Impala. It's driving down Main Street, and it's about 2 blocks from the 5 Points area. He follows the car for a bit before turning his lights on top of the car on. He's likely radioing in that he's behind a car that matches the one they're all looking for so he can get some backup. The driver doesn't pull over, though. Instead, he turns down the wrong way of a one-way street. Eventually, he has to pull over since he's kind of stuck. Officer Kraft approaches the vehicle and sees a young man sitting in the driver's seat. A young woman, who is presumed to be his girlfriend, is sitting in the passenger seat. Immediately, the officer smells marijuana. He asked the young man if he had a driver's license, and he said he didn't have it on him. He asked if he's been smoking pot, and he said he was earlier. This entire interaction is captured on Officer Kraft's body camera and also his dash cam. You can go to YouTube right now and watch it. This driver is cooperating and answering all the questions. Officer Kraft asks him to step out of the vehicle. The suspect has his hands in his pockets, and Officer Kraft tells him to take his hands out of his pockets. The man complies, but then he decides to make a run for it. The suspect takes off, and Officer Kraft chases him for a bit. By now, other deputies have arrived, and they're chasing him as well. Officer Kraft decides that he's going to back off, and he's going to let these other officers catch him. You guys go on ahead. He needs to get back to that black Chevy Impala because there's a woman in the passenger seat who may start the car and leave with it. He gets back to the car, and the woman, whose name is Marie, is standing outside. She was helpful in providing answers to all of the officers' questions. We will later learn that Marie had only been dating him for a few weeks. Officer Kraft opens the Impala and sees a pink keychain sitting inside. He also found a mint condition rose gold iPhone jammed in between the driver's seat and the console. But the most damning evidence was the amount of blood in the back seat. This officer isn't going to take swabs and do a complete forensic audit on this car. He's going to save that for the crime scene techs to do. For now, he's got Samantha's phone and her keychain and a whole lot of blood stains. He also notes that the child's safety locks were engaged, so that is how he was able to keep Samantha from getting out of the car. So this car is like a mobile crime scene, and this guy's just riding around with his girlfriend smoking pot at 3:30 a.m. Officer Kraft asks Maria who the driver is. What's his name? She responds, his name is Nate. Nathaniel Rowland is 24 years old. He goes by Nate. Nate lives in New Zion, South Carolina, near where Samantha's body was found. He graduated from East Clarendon High School, where he was an accomplished basketball player. His basketball coach described him as a great kid who never got into any trouble and was kind to everyone and consistently pushed his classmates to do better. He also said his parents were very involved during basketball games by organizing the fundraisers and stuff that sports parents do. Nate was the captain of the school's varsity basketball team. After graduation, he attended the South Carolina State University, but he did not complete his studies or graduate. You can look up his Facebook page. His cover photo is a picture of him standing in front of the black Chevy Impala. Nate has no criminal history except for one instance where he was arrested for obtaining a signature or property under false pretenses valued at $2,000 or less. Basically, he robbed someone of a PlayStation 4 and then he pawned it. Nate is taken to the police station and he begins having some kind of medical emergency. He says he has the flu and he's having trouble breathing. EMTs arrive to check him out and tell police there's nothing wrong with this guy, detain him. This is crazy to me that Samantha was killed and then her body was located in a rural area and then the suspect captured within 24 hours. Nate is going to deny that he has anything to do with Samantha's murder. He is 100% innocent, he says. His family backs this up, saying he would never in 100 years do something like this. I know parents never want to believe that their child is capable of doing something as horrendous as this. I get it. However, there is a whole lot of evidence that shows us that he did. But his parents refuse to believe it, and Nate says he's innocent. He says he went to a house party the night before and slept in a hotel the rest of the night. When he woke up the next morning, his car was in the hotel parking lot, and he saw a bunch of bloodstains in the back seat. He says someone must have borrowed his car. If this guy truly believes he's innocent, then why run? Samantha's mother, Marcy Josephson, didn't hold back. She told reporters, his actions were senseless, vile, and unacceptable. It sickens us to know that his face was the last thing our baby girl saw on this earth. Does he even know her name? He took away our daughter, a sister, a granddaughter, a niece, a cousin. His selfish, unspeakable, violent actions have created a hole in our universe, and we see the unimaginable ripple effect on our world. An autopsy is performed, and it shows that Samantha was stabbed 120 times. Some of the stab wounds were so close together that he couldn't get an exact count. From her head to her neck to her lungs, even her feet were stabbed. It's believed this whole thing happened in Nate's car due to the amount of blood. Samantha's body contained less than 1 ounce of blood inside of it. The average body contains several liters of blood. That gives us an idea of how much blood she had lost. The medical examiner determined that it took 10 to 20 minutes for Samantha to die. She was fighting back at first until she couldn't fight anymore. In the car, along with the pink keychain and the rose gold iPhone, they found footprints on the window. She had been trying to kick out the window since the child locks prevented her from opening the door or rolling down the window. They found a container of bleach and some wipes in the trunk. It looked like he partially tried to clean up the car. They checked Samantha's debit card to see if anyone had made any hits on it. There were 9 attempts at various ATMs, but no cash was withdrawn because the person didn't have the PIN number. They pull up the security video from the ATMs, and it shows a man walking up with his hood pulled tightly around his head. He's holding the strings tight with one hand and trying to complete the transaction with the other hand. He was also wearing a mask. Samantha and Nate's phones were analyzed, and it was determined that they were traveling together after 2 a.m. when Samantha got into his vehicle, and all the way to the location where her body was found before being powered off. We also learned that Nate attempted to sell Samantha's phone. He took it to one of those phone stores called Cellular City, and he actually knew the owner. The guy says Nate came in with this brand new rose gold iPhone and wanted to sell it. The guy begins looking through the photos and sees a woman who appeared to be a white woman who was in college in most of the photos. He's like, yeah, I think this phone is stolen. I don't think it's yours. So he doesn't offer Nate any money for it. When Nate is questioned about this by police, he said that when he got into his car in the morning and saw someone had taken it out and there's a bunch of blood, he saw the phone on the seat, so he wanted to sell it. Not call the police and say someone committed a murder in my car, but just sell the phone. Police really want to talk to Maria, who is Nate's girlfriend. She had just met him a few weeks before, so she likely won't have any issues giving up all the info on him. We learn Maria is 24, just like Nate. She works full-time at McDonald's. They had actually met a few years prior, but didn't really talk or anything. She says about a month ago, he pulled up in the drive-thru where she was working, and he said, "Didn't we meet a few years ago?" They remembered each other, and he offered to give her a ride home that night, and they had been living together for the last few weeks in her duplex that she was renting. This lady is super trusting, it sounds like. On the night of March 28th, she says that she had went to bed and Nate was downstairs watching TV. Maria woke up a short while later to use the bathroom and he wasn't there. She says when she got up that morning, he was not there. She's annoyed because she doesn't want to be late for her shift and he's nowhere to be found. He's her ride to work. 2 hours later, Nate pulls in and Maria is fuming mad because she's late for work. He doesn't answer any of her questions. He just says, "I'll be back later." He has to go to his sister's house and take his nephew to school. 10 minutes later, he pulls back into Maria's house and he's going to drive her to work. Maria gets in the car and asks him, "Where is my visor? It was in here yesterday." She's referring to her McDonald's visor hat. It's part of her uniform. He tells her it's in the country. She's like, "What?" He says he had to throw it out in the country because it had blood on it. Maria asks, why would it have blood on it? He tells her to mind her business. She asks, why do you have a white sheet draped across the back seat? Why is there dried blood everywhere? Mind your business. Whose iPhone and pink keychain is this? Mind your business. Nate dropped her off at work. When asked why she didn't go in and call 911, she said that she was afraid. She has a little girl and didn't want him to come after them. She also wasn't sure if it was because he had hit a dog or a deer and put it in the car for some reason, which would be a much more innocent explanation. A coworker ended up giving Maria a ride home that day, and when she got home, she saw Nate is still wearing the same clothes he had on since Wednesday night. He's cleaning his car. She said it smelled like chlorine. He was using harsh chemicals like bleach to get rid of all the blood. She said he was wearing surgical gloves and using cleaning wipes. She asked him again why he's doing so much cleaning to his car, and he tells her once again to mind her business. She asked him about the iPhone because it appeared like a female's phone, and he says he was cleaning it up to give it to her. Maria tells him she doesn't need a new phone. She's got a perfectly working phone. Most importantly, she saw him disposing of a knife-like device. This is the murder weapon. It's got 2 blades on it. It kind of looks like a Leatherman multi-purpose tool, but when you open the knife, there's 2 blades. This would explain why there's so many stab wounds. The 2 knives were parallel to one another. Each stab would be 2 stabs. Maria tells police that they should come to her house because there's a bag of trash sitting outside that Nate had been throwing stuff from the car into. Police go there because this could be more evidence. There, they find bloody sheets, cleaning supplies, bloody towels, and the murder weapon with blood and hair on it. DNA tests showed that this was Samantha's blood. The police get in touch with the owner of Cellular City and ask for his surveillance camera footage. It shows Nate get out of his black Chevy Impala. The car has a white sheet draped over the back seat. He goes into the store with Samantha's phone and comes back out. Police need all the evidence they can get. They need to make sure there's enough that a jury would convict him if he's guilty. They come to the conclusion that the person in the ATM surveillance videos with the hood pulled up is wearing the exact same clothes that Nate was wearing when he showed up to Cellular City to sell Samantha's phone. Meanwhile, a vigil takes place at the University of South Carolina. Samantha's dad tells the large crowd of mourners to be safe, travel in pairs. Her family went on to say what a senseless crime this was. Samantha wouldn't hurt anyone. She was a bright light who didn't deserve this. A large funeral is going to take place at a temple for her. I saw the video on YouTube of her casket being driven in the hearse from the funeral home to the temple, and it's unloaded and carried inside, and it was so heartbreaking. Nate Rowland was charged with kidnapping and murdering Samantha Josephson. In May 2019, Marcy and Seymour Josephson attended the University of South Carolina's graduation where they accepted their daughter's diploma. They received her degree in political science that she had worked so hard for. One of the seats in the first row was draped with her graduation robe, and it was an emotional day for everyone. Samantha's parents worked hard to get a law passed, and it worked. It is called Sammy's Law. It was first introduced by Representative Chris Smith from New Jersey. President Joe Biden signed it into law in January 2023. It requires Uber, Lyft, and other ride-sharing companies to have their vehicles display a large illuminated sign and also have a QR code that would need to be scanned. If you stop driving for Uber, you have to turn these items in. So if you ever get in an Uber, look for the QR code and think of Samantha Josephson and her family who want you to be safe. On July 20th, 2021, Nate's trial begins. The jury was a pool of 700 people, narrowed down to 12 jurors and 4 alternates. According to Lauren Adams for WIS-TV, there were 10 women and 6 men seated on the jury. Of those, 8 people are black, 2 are Hispanic, and 1 person is Indian, and 5 are white. Nate's lawyer gives her statement. She claims he is innocent. Their argument was that none of Nate's DNA was found on Samantha. Defense attorney Alicia Good stated, 0. That's the amount of DNA on Samantha Josephson's body that matches Nate's. 0. It's not on her clothing, not under her ripped and torn fingernails, it's not on her ankles. She also states 0 is an important number because that's how many bad things you're going to hear about Samantha Josephson. She makes it clear that this murder wasn't Samantha's fault, but it wasn't her client's fault either. The judge in this case is Judge Newman. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he was the same judge in the Alex Murdaugh trial. You've probably seen him in articles and television. His daughter is a judge as well. Really great judge, and he's fair, and he's one of my favorites. I wish he was on the Supreme Court. On Tuesday, July 27th, 2021, The jury sided with the state, and Nate was found guilty on all charges. Before sentencing, Nate's mother got up to speak, and she claimed her son was innocent. She didn't get more than a few words out before Judge Newman interrupted her and said, "Ma'am, I'm not going to hear any claim of innocence. Your son has been convicted of murder." She goes on to say that he finished high school, went to college, played basketball. She says a mother knows her child, and he didn't do this. It was sad to watch her because I feel like she really truly believes that her son is innocent, even though there's all this evidence that shows that he's guilty. The judge interrupts her a second time. You can tell he feels for her, but he tells her again, he's guilty of murder. He's guilty of kidnapping. He committed a violent crime. He thanks her, but he isn't going to hear whatever she has to say since he's already been found guilty. He tells her, yes, your child was a good child, but that was when he was a child. Samantha's mother was given the opportunity to speak as well. She told Nate that her death was my death. She told him, you put her through excruciating pain, and for what? The $35 she had in her bank account? I felt this mother's pain on so many levels. I didn't lose my son to a violent crime, but I lost a son who was 2 years younger than Samantha was. And when her mom talked about how you raise your kids hoping that they're going to always be safe and happy and healthy, and she says that she never got to say goodbye to her, and I really felt that. She went on to say that she feels pain thinking of Samantha being stabbed and kicked and fighting for her life in the back of that car. Samantha's father and sister gave their impact statements. The judge also gave Nate's dad time to speak as well. At sentencing, Judge Newman says his heart goes out to both families. He speaks directly to Nate, and it was one of the most moving sentencings I've ever heard. He called him heartless. He says law enforcement in this case did the best job of investigating in any case he'd ever seen. He tells him that there was an avalanche of evidence, and every road led to you. There was thousands of trails, and every trail led to you. Every speck of evidence led to you. He says leniency is not in his DNA. Nate was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 5 years. The judge told him, you only get 1 life, and you're going to spend the rest of yours in prison. I read through his inmate report. My God, South Carolina posts a public record of each inmate and their jobs in prison and any violations they've had. It looks like he's not behaving himself there either. He's consistently losing his canteen privileges for 90 days each time. He was caught trying to use a cell phone twice. He was caught using marijuana and lost his television privileges for 1 year. He was caught affiliating with a prison gang. He lost his visitation privileges for 110 days. This murder was overkill. He stabbed her 120 times. I cannot find a motive. They were complete strangers. She got in his car, he engaged the child locks, and he drove for a couple minutes. Then he began stabbing her. And for what? A debit card for an account with $35 in it that he couldn't use without the PIN number, and a phone he couldn't sell? That's it? That's what this young lady died for? To anyone listening, please be safe when getting into an Uber. I know sometimes you're drinking and may not be in the right headspace to confirm license plate numbers and things like that, but please try to verify that this is the correct car that was assigned to you. Samantha's family has worked hard to keep you safe with a new law that requires QR codes and illuminated rideshare signs on the vehicle. My heart goes out to Samantha's parents, her sister, her boyfriend, and her friends. She didn't deserve to die in the backseat of a car she trusted to take her home. Rest in peace to Samantha Josephson. That's it for this week, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care, and much love to you all. Intro music is Feral Angel Waltz, which is composed by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons. All his music can be found on his website, incompetech.com.